Alright, you probably can't see me too well, but the reason I'm making this video, it's just a short trip home from getting some cake. But what I was going to talk about is a situation with this commercial I just heard on the BBC radio, on the satellite radio. It was talking about, Islam and how beautiful and nuanced it is, and how much diversity there is in Islam. Well, yeah, there is a lot of diversity and there's a lot of nuances, but at the same time, the fact that they're trying to soften the attitude people have towards the Saudi interpretation of Islam, which is called Wahhabism within Saudi Arabia, and Salafism outside of Saudi Arabia, is rather interesting, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, oh, well, Islam, first of all, they're trying to say not all of Islam is bad, which I don't have a problem with that, because, yeah, that is true. But within Islam, the Salafi and Wahhabi doctrines actually are pretty, primitive and crazy, kind of, in comparison to the rest of Islam. They're trying to say, oh, well, not all Salafis are, murdering savages, killing people and stuff like ISIS, because that's what ISIS is. They're Salafis, they're Wahhabis. But, this whole idea of, Salafis are nuanced. Yeah, there are some Salafis who are, quote, peaceful, but the only reason they're peaceful is because they don't have, the access, as far as, money, guns, all that kind of stuff that they need in order to do that kind of crazy stuff. But, yeah, out in the West, they're all, Salafi light. They're pretty, relaxed in their way of, acting. But those same people, it takes very little to actually radicalize them, given the proper motive and all that kind of stuff. Based off of that same idea, every time I hear these kind of programs where they're trying to soften the blow against Salafism or Wahhabism, it's basically a cheap stealth jihad that Saudi Arabia is doing with a lot of funding they give BBC and a lot of these other media channels. It's actually really disgusting and insults the intelligence of anybody that has even half of a brain, because, as we all know, Islam in itself is a very, very strict religion to begin with. That's why there's all these Sufi movements, Irfani, Shiite type movements, all this kind of stuff where people are trying to get away from that extreme strictness. I myself, I'm more of a secular kind of Sufi type Shiite Muslim, and the reason is because I don't believe in that strict, psychotic attitude towards Islam. Going off the same idea there, you got to imagine that the Islam of Saudi Arabia and Salafism or Wahhabism is not the same Islam that I practice, because what I mean by practice, it doesn't have to be a physical practice. You don't have to pray 5 times a day, do every single salat as the hadith has taught it, because in the Quran, by the way, there is no such thing as a 5 times a day ritualistic salat. There is no such thing. You can look all over the Quran, you will never find it. It doesn't exist. I've studied Islam for 20 years with Sunni, Shia, Salafi, different sheikhs, and one thing I've learned is that 90% of all this stuff that's called so-called Islamic practice is actually based off of nothing but hearsay and hadith. It has nothing to do with the Quran itself. In the Quran, the only thing it says about prayer, it says to remember God in the morning, and in the evening, and I think there might be one where it's somewhere in the midday or something, but generally 2 to 3 times is the maximum of remembering God, praying to God. But it doesn't tell you to do the salat, the ritualistic salat, where you do all these cycles and all this kind of stuff. And that's I've done it myself. I know what I'm talking about, but it's not exactly the same thing. It's actually more similar, and this is very interesting, to Orthodox Christian beliefs. And because if you read Orthodox Christian beliefs, they actually do believe in a 2 times, one in the morning, one at night, type prayer. So it goes along perfectly well with what the Quran teaches. And basically the Quran is just saying, the same thing. It's just repeating the same beliefs. It's just saying, hey, pray in the morning, pray at night. But it doesn't it doesn't teach you or show you how to do that prayer. So you have to kind of talk to God on your own. Now, all this other stuff, again, it's 5 times a day salat. This is all stuff that came after. People say, on hearsay of what the Prophet did, but there is no concrete evidence of this is what, actually took place. You can try to say, oh, there's all these different narrators. True. I could say something and my friends could make up all sorts of stuff about it, but that doesn't make it necessarily true. Okay, so I'm going off the same idea, going back to the original reason why I made this video, is that, I don't believe that there is really a, quote, positive aspect of Wahhabism or Salafism, because really it's a very ultra strict version of Sunni Islam, to the point where it restricts everything you do. Not just, if the warring and jihad and bloodshed and cutting of heads was the only problem, that would be one thing, but that's not the only problem. So even if you take all that away, Salafism light, which we have that in the United States, does include, mandatory hijab for the, women have to be covered, men have to grow beards, you can't eat pork, you can't touch alcohol. There's a lot of hardcore restrictions that if you don't follow those, your family will shun you, they may punish you, secretly they may try to kill you, all sorts of stuff. So you just have to be careful with that kind of stuff, because, a lot of the Western media has been bought out by the Saudis, especially channels like BBC, which is basically like a Saudi mouthpiece lately. But going off the original idea here, don't be fooled by all the Saudi money and teachings and the media, because when you watch CNN, BBC, any of these channels, really, you're just getting a lot of Saudi influence and money, and people trying to just brainwash you and basically Islamize you, because the caliphate that they want to spread, they have to do it through any means necessary, and that's basically also includes lying to you. Just remember that. Take care and talk to you next time.